Today we'll be covering everyone's favorite subject, Egyptian statues. More specifically, the aesthetic and representation of these statues. Here I made a quick mashup of the Egyptian upper class across time. When we review Eurocentric mashups and Western picture books, you'll never see this kind of aesthetic, despite it being the stock Egyptian aesthetic throughout history. What we get instead is cherry-picked images with maximum manipulation in mind. The Eurocentric YouTube channels and museums will never post a selection of full-on images in the fashion that you see here, because it flies in the face of their propaganda. Certain image about ancient Kemet that matches their Hollywood Confederate version as closely as possible. A singular type of look being cast as the ancient Egyptian. In the meantime, countless other artifacts are pushed to the side for Greek artifacts, fake statues, and stylized images. And this is all by design. Even when the images are stylized, so-called Negroid, they'll put blinders on and still claim Caucasoid despite the fact that we all know what we're looking at here. Before we start, let me reiterate that there is no one way to look Egyptian, and there is no Egyptian type. Any Afrocentric or Eurocentric selling this to you has a political agenda in mind, and it should be rightly rejected. I put this mashup together to show that I'm not just saying that. We can see with our own eyeballs here that there is a high level of variation amongst the Egyptian elite. There is no mold for the physical appearance of Egyptian statues because these appearances have changed in style and substance throughout ancient history. Many Kemetic statues had clear physical characteristics that continue to persist throughout time, and these characteristics have vexed the Eurocritics for many years. The face of the black man and woman as we see it today are the faces of ancient royalty. The Eurocentric empire has known this for many years, so they seek to destroy and corrupt the same images their ancestors admired. An example of this memory continues to live on with their lip injections and tanning salons. Nowadays, the dark person gets skin lightening cream while the white person gets a tan. This was all by design as we switch sides on the spectrum into the new paradigm. So please keep this in mind, that your features are royal features and you are never behind. To finish up this segment, the Eurocentric academic empire has spent many years putting themselves close to Egypt side by side while giving it up to us with subtle psychological clues, such as this fantasy painting we see here, or this statue in England, which tells us everything we need to know. And let me reiterate, they know exactly what they've been looking at this entire time, so they get to work indoctrinating people into a fantasy belief system that they use to harass us across all media. But no matter what they do or how much they dream, they will never fill these shoes. Have a good day, Eurocentrics. Have a good night. Now let's start with Egyptian profiles. One of the weaker tactics of the Eurocritics is to post a photo of a profile and ask,
what so-called Negro could possibly have this profile?
The answer is we can have any profile, because we are the template for all profiles that exist on this earth today. I don't need a mashup for this. I've already done that, and the Eurocentrics are just going to whine anyway. Whether it's a triangle nose, a long chin, or Egyptian eyes. We were born that way and will continue to be born that way. Akhenaten's profile is clearly exaggerated, but we have many Akhenatens and Nefertitis in this world. Instead, the Eurocentrics create a fake statue, find a homeless white woman, and have her pose next to that so they can circulate the pictures around the world. In the meantime, we're labeled Negrocentrics if we even mention or approach this subject, and this is all so they can continue to do this with impunity. Another thing I need to include here is that many stylized images are based on the actual appearances of real people that have always been in Africa and other places. Take this Amenhotep for instance. 7 Phoenician 7 wants you to stare at fake model heads all day, then expects you to put blinders on when you're reviewing this. But we know exactly who that is when we see it. And it's only with Egyptian art does the world need to do this stuff, and it's a shame. Let's go over to the Middle Kingdom. Here we see Amenhotep III, and this is a real black man, a real suten, not a corrupted image. And this is what I mean when I ask black people to look in the mirror and throw out this Habesha, Arabic, Toys R Us that they continue to come with. Even upon closer examination, we can see exactly what that is. The Eurocentrics play a game of one-upsmanship, which is a game they can never win with me, because I show everything and don't limit myself to anything. Even when looking at this, I'm more than willing to accept this mashup because he very well could have looked like that. If the statue was based on any actual human, that is. And there's nothing wrong with that, but most Egyptian kings did not look like this in their representations. Instead, the Eurocentrics go buck wild, imagine them as a magical Englishman, and tell us to have a good night. At the end of the day, they have very little to work with, so they work overtime and flood the world with some of the most ridiculous and disrespectful recreations we've seen. And they remain unpunished to this day. King Tut's archives left us plenty to work with, but the parasites still go and create the complete opposite of what was left, all to soothe and babysit the feelings of a people who have found themselves missing from the pages of ancient history. People know by now that I have some of the hardest hitting mashups in the game. And here's another example of that. This is what I call that Egyptian Feng Shui. The Eurocentric academic empire has no Feng Shui, which is why everything they do is highly suspect. I chose a random photo of a random
modern Egyptian
and mashed them up with typical Old Kingdom. There is no Feng Shui here, or anywhere for that matter. So, they create their own Feng Shui by creating their own artifacts. Since they found themselves missing from the walls and statues, the most glorious works were sold to private collections or left to remain obscure, all to be replaced by the Looney Tunes cartoon show, where they create their own artifacts and then constantly parade their sisters and wives next to these things. We, on the other hand, take existing artifacts and find the actual twin, while they create the image they want, then pose someone next to it. Next, we create many more, circulate these images around the world in the name of education, and what we have is white therapy. There are now more fake images of Nefersleepy than there are of the real Nefertiti. They've built up this woman into a great Egyptian queen when there were much more potent queens who received no such treatment. Speaking of the fake Nefersleepy, when we review this piece of junk, it's plain to see that this toy resembles nothing that came from the time period that she lived in. The unspoken rule of the Eurocentric academic empire is to go with the flow and pretend that's not the case. Otherwise, you're an Afrocentric thief. And many so-called pro-black people will continue to go along with this and take their side, which is insane and self-destructive. And these same people have the nerve to be teaching other people about black history. When are we going to stop falling for this? To finish up Nefersleepy, let's go back hundreds of years before she existed. Here we have a young king of the Middle Kingdom. They will never explain to us throughout space and time how the elite class went from this to a British woman ruling over everyone. This photo was taken on February 3rd, 1930. This woman's name is E.C. Butt. We see how the Germans worked with the English to fast forward this never-ending propaganda campaign with the fake Nefersleepy. This was a psychological campaign to gas up supremacist feelings of a people who were, in fact, entirely irrelevant to this subject. And there's absolutely no way this was her husband. Not this chick. In this day and age, the pyramid robots are still hard at work in their factories creating outright false images which they fill the museums with by the thousands. In the meantime, all we get is jokes about,
yeah, and the moon is fake too, right, Afrocentric?
Now this is the section that I call the Almond Hotep section. And here we'll be reviewing the identity theft of Amenhotep III, a king who lived the actual fantasy and splendor that is conjured up in people's minds. First, let me say that Almond Hotep was a real black man and obviously was proud of it. There doesn't need to be a concept of so-called black people at that time for this to be true, because it's written all over his face. I have here 5 artifacts left behind that demonstrates these facts. Almond Hotep and his immediate family left us the ultimate representations of the black man and woman, and this is our testament for all time. If you are a black man watching this today, you are quite literally looking into a reflection of yourself, even if you're nothing more than a sellout. Many of these sellouts, they look away from the mirror because the white supremacist has left them so traumatized that they don't want to get another whooping. As for the Eurocentrics, they hate Almond Hotep, so they design a cartoon that replaces him with them, and now Almond Hotep no longer exists. Now let's take a look at him under some better lighting. When I look at this, I think about all we've been through over the years, and it fills me with a fire that burns in my heart. I think of all the times they told me to study the Congo instead. I think of the sellouts telling us that we're thieves who should be professors of Negro land instead. I look at this thing and see the physical representation of everything that has ever been presented on this channel. The Eurocentric looks at this and starts talking about a tan, darkening with age, anybody can look like that, or it's Arabic, complete with a fake-ass mashup. And this fire continues to burn inside me no matter what punishments they think they're dishing out to me. And I'm calling out the Eurocentric academic empire today to tell them to stop spitting on us and stop disrespecting ancient Kemet. You weren't even their slave, so you can't say they mistreated you. But I know I'm not talking to logical individuals, and so their punishment must continue. Here we have our second example, which is the stylized representation of the black man. When this thing was made, the British hadn't even learned to speak English yet, let alone become an Egyptian king. Yet they are the custodians of the artifacts and knowledge and have hired themselves as gatekeepers obsessed with other people's cultures. It's why their museums are filled with so many artifacts that they refuse to give back. And that's a fact. By the time we reach this third example here, I've already made my point. If Almond Hotep were to be standing on a random street corner in America, he just might have the cops called on him for no reason, rather than being invited to the richest, most powerful homes in the world today. But perception is reality, and the Eurocritics are not being held responsible for the reality they've created for us. And that reality is a stylized Caucasian, which is 2 lies for the price of 1. Here once again, Almond Hotep has darkened with age. No real conversation about the fact that we're looking at a black man. What they'll all tell us is,
well, race doesn't matter. Well, race doesn't matter.
So we hear about Caucasian theories for 200 years, then when it's our turn to speak, they say,
race doesn't matter, and we don't need to talk about that.
If that's the case, then why did you completely change his appearance here? This is quite literally a white European dream of being an Egyptian king when they were not. And as you look at this, let's remind all of you of all the times they called you a Negrocentric, an Afrocentric, a history thief, a Negro shop, and all the sellouts who look at that and say it's just fine. And if you're a reasonably well-adjusted white person in the world watching this, how can you sit idly by and allow it to happen? And I want to ask the Eurocentric academic empire, why do you continue to abuse the ancient Egyptians in this fashion? It's very abusive and goes against anything calling itself academics. Here, our fourth example is going to be another profile pic, a highly stylized piece of work, making sure to accentuate our cheekbone structure. This is what I mean when I say that your features are royal features, and they were before they even knew what the splendor of true kingship was. Then we get to Queen T, another abused Egyptian. It couldn't be any more clear that they were completely floored by this woman. As you see, she is not a Habesha or Arabic. She is just a straight up black woman, which is what I've been saying for years, that the random Egyptian type was actually any given black person that you see. And believe me, I've seen a lot. I've demonstrated and shown it right here for a few years now. Instead, all I hear is Sumerian and Indian theories. You guys do realize we were over there too, right? National Geographic created a distraction by talking about darkening with age, which is completely irrelevant, plus we come in all colors. And what they didn't want you talking about is the fact that this is the face of a black woman as clearly as this is the face of a white woman. And this doesn't even have any color on it. We're going to finish up Queen T by taking a look at this fine example. They say this is believed to be Queen T, but in reality, it could be anybody because they rarely show us how they came to these conclusions in the first place. As for this, the work speaks for itself. You are a princely people, and this is why they punish you and put on Egyptian costumes. I couldn't be any more potent here. I couldn't be any more irresistible. Take me to the halls of Oxford so I can ask these people, why are we punished and what did we ever do to deserve this other than achieving success without their help? They punished the 25th dynasty for being mentioned in the Bible. They punished the Nubians for being inside Egypt the entire time. They punished these same Nubians for witnessing incredible things that they themselves never saw. The end result is that they have taken it upon themselves to write themselves into history. And simply expressing that makes you the automatic racist Afrocentric, while they become the instant victims and you become a criminal. Never mind the fact that they just corrupted the image of the Egyptian king by treating his actual body like trash and putting his subjects on display and telling us that's the king, among other things. And now the slave is the master and proxies have entered who have nothing to do with anything. The final section of this video will be a quick review of Egyptian faces. I've put too many examples of these Egyptians up over the years for anybody to continue playing games. This is why I meet very little resistance from the Eurocentrics these days, because they already know, and I've always known, and I'm glad that I helped them. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Have a good night, Eurocentrics. Bye-bye. Professional YouTuber would never put this picture up and start talking about some Germanic Egyptians, which is an actual thing in the world apparently. No, he will not post this. He will not be on a book. We'll get a Greek artifact and someone telling us to shut up and dribble. Here we have the mighty Amenhotep II, a legendary Egyptian king and an actual black man who lived on this earth. Black, African, Hebrew, Negro, Ethiopian, whatever is your fantasy. Whatever is your fancy. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. What we get today is black pharaohs of the 25th dynasty, while Amenhotep is 100% white, while denying they're saying that he's white in the first place. This is all designed to drive us insane and make sure that we don't enjoy anything. But I'm here to inform the haters that we're enjoying it anyway, so thank you very much. We're going to go on and continue our theme of the Middle Kingdom and ask why they keep these guys obscure and fill our screens and books with Eurocentric fake statues that are also much lower quality. If the History Channel were to do a new documentary on Amenhotep's successors, you know the actors would look just like this. Here we have excellent examples, and we can't get anything in this direction whatsoever except a Mexican in an Egyptian costume. In the meantime, the parasites will seek to ensnare us in debates by saying
Caucasian, or an ancient Arabic person.
The headquarters of white supremacy worships the face of the black man and woman, while simultaneously degrading us and pretending they don't do it. It is nothing more than animalistic, beastly behavior. And these are the custodians of our artifacts on top of everything else. Oh, my bad. I meant the world's artifacts, because now anyone can be an Egyptian, and everyone under the sun was there being an Egyptian king, including the aliens. But there can only be one reality. Anyone telling you anything else is simply wants you to live in their reality and as quickly as possible. We've got to stop falling for that and remain disciplined. Here we have another Egyptian face the Eurocentrics refuse to acknowledge and post anywhere. Even big-time woke people give this guy no action. All they have for us is the same-ass pictures we've been seeing for years, too. When we get a close-up, we can see that he will never get a book, a copy, or a poster like Nefer Sleepy. Hotep will be held up as the master, and this will be thrown in the garbage, ignored by everyone, on both sides. As we continue forward, we have more faces that are never to be included in any Egyptian recreation. It doesn't look Western European or Arabic enough. To this day, the legacy still lives inside Africa. The fantasy they seek walks the very earth right now. And that's why they can't stay out of Africa or leave our women alone. The Arabs know all about this. The Arabs know all about this. And finally, we're going to end this video with the most famous example of the black man's face. That's why they ripped his beard off and super glued it back on. They hate King Tut and everything he represents, which is everything they missed out on, and that's too bad. What makes me the most sad is all the sellouts who can look at this picture and go right back to the Negro land that was spoon-fed to them by Eurocentrics themselves. And so this tic-tac-toe with the statue videos for the Eurocentrics is just a game. I saw through that a long time ago. I'm more interested in scholarship, but when it comes to the gamut of what I've brought today with me, no matter what your race or culture is, you've got to give it up to these amazing black people. Thank you very much for watching. Join me next time where I'll be giving this same treatment to Egyptian tomb paintings. So don't forget to subscribe or share this with your friends and family. I gotta go, but I will see you next time.